This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. Dr. Sonny Spear, our guest today is Dr. Maria Vasilakis. She is wonderful. What a great story. She's a third generation dentist. Her grandmother and her mother and her father, all dentists. Siblings dentist. Aunts and uncles dentist. Great story from Cleveland area, settled in Boston, worked for 5 years, started her own practice, was in network, dropped the two lions and tigers in the room, and hasn't looked back. So here's a great success story of taking ownership of your practice and removing the influence of being in network. Great conversation. Wonderful lady, great, successful person. I think you'll get a lot out of it. As always, the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast is brought to you by Kettenbach. Kettenbach Dental is excited to announce their first major advancement in fluoride varnish treatment called Profacil. No longer with any alcohol or resins. Instead, patients will want to feel the smooth, silky lubriciousness of a dimethicone gel delivery system. No more grit. Contact Kettenbach today for more details. 877-532-2123. If you listen, you like the podcast, please click like, share, subscribe, share it with your friends. It's also on YouTube under Fee for Service Dentist. If you like it, please do all that. If you don't like it, well, please tell me. Hit me up. My cell phone, 607-624-2962. Or you can email me at sonnyspira@gmail.com. Yes, I have no imagination when I pick my email. Have a great one, folks. Please enjoy. Thank you.
My name is Drew Burns, and I'm a part of a small group of dentists who believe something crazy. We believe that the standard of care is just not good enough. We demand the best of ourselves and the best for our patients. We believe that the best way? No, the only way to practice dentistry is on our own terms. If you ask the dental consultants or the corporate CEOs, they tell you that what we're doing isn't smart, that fee-for-service dentistry is dead, and that the golden age of dentistry is over. Yet, while others focus on profits first, we focus on the patient first. And yet our offices are some of the most profitable in the entire country because we invest in ourselves and we are doing things right. It's our name on the door and it's our reputation on the line. My name is Drew Burns and I am a fee-for-service dentist. This is the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast and these are our stories.
Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. Dr. Sonny Spear. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Maria Vasilakis. Did I say it right?
Perfect. You must know some Greek people.
I know a lot of Greek people. Yeah. I'm like people. I'm not Greek, but I could be. And then they're Greek, they could be Italian, so it's close enough. All right. So she is a restorative dentist, holds a BA in zoology from Miami University, and received her DMD from Case Western Reserve University School of Dental Medicine. Great school. She also is a member of and a lifelong student at the Coyce Center for Advanced Dental Study in Seattle, Washington. She has a passion for her profession and is a third-generation dentist in her family. Well, that's cool. She is an advocate for keeping dentistry independent, patient-focused, and free from corporate influence as a board member of the Alliance of Independent Dentists. If you remember, Jill Tanzi and Christine Grazioso, they're a couple of heavy hitters in that group, and we have another one. This is awesome. She is vice president for the Alumni Association for Case Western, and Dr. Maria was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. All right, and spent a year living in Sydney, Australia. She moved to Boston immediately after dental school, as she loves all that New England has to offer. All right, welcome to the show, Maria. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for agreeing to be on after I kind of stalked you, pressured you. You know how it goes. So, Cleveland, are you a Cavs fan? Are you a Browns fan? Guardians?
All of that. Really? Sadly.
Well, I'm on the other part of the lake. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. So when we play Cleveland, it's,
intense.
We have both been referred to as the mistake on the lake. So
Yes.
I have no problem I went in dental school. I went down to see Bernie Kosar was your quarterback.
Oh, yes.
And Jim Kelly was just coming along, and we were just struggling with interceptions with Jimbo. And We lost at the Brown Stadium, but we had a good time.
Yeah.
Neat play.
Strong fans in those cities.
Oh, absolutely. Just, salt of the earth people,
Yeah.
So case was easy for you. So talk about, you went to Miami University. Is that Miami, Ohio, or did you go
Miami, Ohio, and Oxford.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a
Yeah.
great school. Really good school. Good value for money back then.
Yeah, good athletic program too.
Yeah.
So so third generation, let's start there. So your grandfather?
Grandmother.
Grandmother.
That's
Oh,
the
that's a trailblazer then.
yeah, I'm lucky to have some really strong women in my family as role models that really made things easy for me.
So tell me, what was her journey? Tell me about what she did.
So she was a dentist in Greece, and I think back then it was pretty easy, well, easier than it was here for women to become doctors and dentists. And
Uh-huh.
then she moved with my grandpa, who was working in my uncle's pie factory in Cleveland, and had to do 2 years of dentistry, 2 or 3, I think, again at Marquette,
Okay.
in Milwaukee. So, but her family lived in Cleveland, so she'd go back and forth on a bus, on the weekends to see her kids. So she had a really not an easy journey, and pretty
Committed.
impressive. Yeah. And then all her 3 kids became dentists, my mom and my aunt and her son, my uncle. So
So your
they're all done.
grandmother and your mother, this is
And
awesome.
my father and my sister and my uncles and everybody.
So your father's a dentist as well.
He's also a dentist. He
Your
taught at
mother,
Case
your
for a
father.
lot of
So
years.
yeah, you've got a long. This is really cool. I've never had though 3 generations of females.
The women part makes it special. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pretty lucky to have those role models. Yeah.
So where in Greece are they from?
All over. Nisidos is a tiny island where my mom's family's from. Samos, where my dad was born, but they all ended up in different cities for school and whatever else. But yeah, they're there. My dad's there now. He moved back recently, and it's a great place to visit in the summers.
So George Papadakis was my teammate in college.
Oh my goodness. So small world. George Papadakis's niece, Angela Theodoridis, is
Yeah.
my son's godmother. She's one of my best friends. She went to law school in Cleveland. Small world.
That's a small world for sure.
Soccer, right? He played soccer.
George was a basketball player, 7
Oh,
foot.
basketball. Oh, different. Sorry, might be a different George Papadakis. Let's not quote me on it. But there was a George Papadakis that played soccer, and his niece was my friend. But yeah, so
He's
no, maybe not. Maybe not.
He and then the Anastos family, who I'm very close with here, they're from Daphne, and
Okay, I know where that
just
is.
below Sparta.
Yeah.
And the mom's from
Have you
Sparta.
been to visit?
Oh yes, I stayed with them in their town. It was unimaginably gorgeous and beautiful, and one of the best vacations our family's ever been. The kids didn't
I'm
want to
so
leave.
glad.
I was like, well, we're going to Athens, and they were like, oh no, we're staying here. They stay in a little town and stood on in Italian, I think it's Piazza, right? The plaza. And
Yeah.
we just, the octopus and the grilled octopus, and it was just
Oh, I'm
amazing.
glad you had a good time.
So that's a great story though. Your mom comes here, she has to do 2 years. So that really hasn't changed a lot over the years, that requirement.
Yeah.
She buses from Cleveland to Milwaukee while she has family.
3 kids. 3 kids.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, she
Was
was
she
a tough
able
one.
to work or no, right? Because she just
She
has to
was.
finish this school.
Not until after school, but after that, she started her own practice in Ohio, in Cleveland.
So she hung shingle in Cleveland.
hmm
So what did she talk about how that went? Like how that started? And
She was a tough cookie. I remember her talking way back in the day about trying to keep insurance out of her practice, and that she just didn't think it was right, that they didn't go to school. She always said they didn't spend the time and money, and they're trying to profit off of us. I remember hearing those back when I was real little. But I think she did accept insurance. But she had her own practice just by herself, no hygienist, made her dentures in her little lab,
oh, okay.
really
Great.
cool. And then things changed a lot in my parents' generation in dentistry, and even more now. Things are really different from, this third generation on.
So talk about your parents. What did they do? So now they
practiced
graduated.
together for a long time. My dad was about 10 years older than my mom. He actually taught her, I think, oral pathology at Case
Okay.
for a year or two. He taught at the school for a long time.
Going out of network can be really scary, but staying in network can be even scarier and riskier too, long term. Insurance reimbursements aren't even keeping pace with inflation, which can really affect the quality of your work, not to mention the quality of your life. I'm Allison Bernstein.
I'm Dr. Josh Bernstein. We went out of network over 20 years ago, and we can show you what worked, what didn't, and how you can do it with minimal risk.
ThriveOutOfNetwork.com teaches you everything you need to know, including the most important part, which is getting your team on board. It teaches them how to communicate with patients and getting them comfortable with the entire process.
Go to ThriveOutOfNetwork.com and check it out today. That's ThriveOutOfNetwork.com.
He was teaching oral pathology at Case, and my mom was a student for a year or two, and then they opened a practice together. Yeah, after my dad got done teaching.
Okay. So what year approximately did they open up and start? What was that generation?
It's in the 70s for sure. I want to say, so I was born in 79. It had to be before that. Had to be like maybe 76, 77,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
So your mom graduates and then goes right into this practice?
Yeah.
That's
right
how it
into-
works? Okay.
Mhm.
So what did it look like for them? I mean, did they scout locations? Did they learn from their, your grandmother? And
I think they picked up some tricks about what city to be in, where to locate. They were in a kind of a medical building in a suburb of Cleveland, and they had some hygienists. They had a really busy practice. My mom worked 2 days. My dad worked 5, and that probably had a lot to do with why I became a dentist, because I could see that my mom could be flexible with her hours and be there for us kids, and and then pick it back up if we were in school. So that flexibility is such a unique thing to our careers. If you're an
Yes.
architect or an engineer and you're doing project-based things, you can't choose how many days a week you work. And I thought that was a really great part of the job.
Was there any synergy between your grandmother's practice and their practice? Was it like,
None at all. They kind of have very different practices. My
Okay.
grandma was really old school, made a lot of dentures, things like that. And my parents had a more comprehensive family kind of practice and some cosmetic stuff back then. And yeah,
Okay. So do you have any siblings?
I have a sister who's an endodontist. So yeah, we're all brainwashed in
So
my
you guys could
family.
open your own dental school is what you're saying.
I hope not.
Maybe
No.
you should compare to what's starting to go on out there with who's really opening new
No,
dental school.
it's a lot
Because
of
you're
work.
more on the independent side, which is sorely
Yes.
needed. So what was just one last question about your parents' practice. What did that look like in terms of their business structure? Were they in network? Were they?
They were, and then I think in the 80s,
Wait, did you say they were or weren't?
they were in network.
We're in network. Okay.
They were in network. It was different back then. The reimbursements were more fair, I think. I think even when I started out, I was in network, and over time they just kept taking more and more back,
Okay.
and I think they tried to, they were in a blue collar neighborhood. They tried to make the most of people's benefits. And I think it was okay for them. I think it, in our generation, it started to get pretty obviously worse, I think.
So are they still in network and then are they still practice?
So my dad sold his practice a while back, and he was in network when he sold. My mom had pulled out of all but one, and sold a year or two ago. So
So were they still together in their practice?
no, they had gotten divorced. They opened their own practices.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, they stayed in. I think their time, in dentistry
Yeah.
wasn't so much affected with insurance as it is now. I'm sure if they were opening now, they'd do it differently.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about your journey then, right? So you go to dental school. You knew all along that was your plan. I'm kind of assuming. I'm sorry, I'm making that assumption.
Yeah, I kind of knew. I really wanted to be an architect. My mom told me that was a hobby. She was kind of right.
You wanted to be an architect, George Vandelay. So You did? Architect was one of your.
I studied that as well. She said, study what you want, but study your pre-med too. So I did a little bit of both. And
Okay.
a lot of my friends who went into architecture, like we just said, they're project-based. They don't get a flexible schedule. They work very hard. So she was right. Mom's always right. She steered me in the right direction.
Okay. All right. So getting into dental school, let's, I assume, challenges involved with that, but now you come back home to Cleveland. And do you live at home? What's that look like?
No, I grew up in a suburb that was a good half hour, 40 minutes from
Okay.
the dental school. And you know how school is so challenging. I got a little apartment on campus. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You got to live and sleep and breathe it, everything.
mhm.
So you're in school. Was there any specialties that were of interest?
I didn't, I always loved the GP aspect. My favorite part of the whole thing is quarterbacking the case and building relationships. I like figuring out it's like a puzzle, where people need to go and what sequence and how it all fits together with their finances. That's the part that I like the most. So I knew I always wanted to be a GP.
Okay. At the dinner table growing up, was there a lot of conversation about running a dental practice or?
Well, yes, there was. And, I worked in both of their offices growing up because, how immigrant families put their kids to work.
Sure.
And
I absolutely do. I go to the Nastos, I go to Broadway Diner, and entire families there.
there
Yeah.
you go. That's exactly it. So, I worked there a bunch. I figured out kind of how the books worked. I got a real good education about that stuff, kind of passively. And the write-offs really shocked me. I remember looking at that from a young age thinking, how do they get to take that money from you? Yeah, they brought the patient in, but that was a long time ago. You've had these relationships now, so that kind of stuff, and they'd say, yeah, but, I think they were a little nervous to drop insurance. I guess I got a little bolder and, well, also the differences were bigger. I think over the years, I know with Jill and Christine started this whole alliance because of how crazy the write-offs got with Delta Dental. And so it just jumped.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure, my parents were as affected by it as we are now. But yeah, I definitely learned a lot about the behind the scenes of running a business, what to do, what not to do too. That was really important to learn. And yeah, they both wanted, well, my mom wanted me to come on and work with her, but I
Right.
kind of wanted to get to Boston and do my own thing.
Interesting. With all the influences and support system that you have in Cleveland, you could go to Boston. So what was it about Boston that appealed to you about practicing dentistry there?
I don't know if I knew much about practicing dentistry here. I just like the city. There's a lot more young people, schools, ideas, education, and I still think I made the right choice. I love Cleveland. It's a great place to be from, but I love what New England has to offer.
Beautiful. Okay, so what year did you graduate dental school?
2005 from Case.
Okay, 2005, you graduate.
Mm-hmm.
Residency, no residency.
No residency. Case is a really great clinical program where we do a ton of clinical work. We graduate with hundreds of crowns and units, before. So none of us really had to do an AGD. Most of us went straight into practice if we didn't specialize.
Okay. So what does that look like when you're hunting for a job?
That's interesting because most people up here did do an AGD, and I had to really present my clinical units, how many crowns I cut before I graduated. And, talking to friends who graduated some of the schools up here, I won't name names, but they'd graduate with 1 crown because they had to share space in their clinics. And, it just wasn't the same setup. So I really
Also
had
the
to.
patient base, because Buffalo
Yes.
and Cleveland are similar, yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of space in Cleveland and a lot of chairs, and we each had our own chair with the receptionist almost scheduling us patients. So we got the opportunity to see a lot of patients during school, which was awesome. And so I had to prove to a lot of my employers here that I knew what I was kind of knew what I was doing, when I got out of school, enough to work on people anyway.
So how did you go about finding job and opportunities? Where did you look? You look in JADA? Did you look in the Boston
So,
Globe? I mean, what'd you do?
I got well, my very first job was my mom's cubicle partner, another Greek dentist who was from here. So Dr. Nick Pappas, and he's up here still. He just retired real recently. So he said, "Why don't you come work with me?" And I did for a bit. And I think he was being nice. His office wasn't really set up for more than one dentist. But I then got directed to the BU. BU has a really good website for job seeking
Okay.
up here. So even though I didn't go there, I signed up on that site and I started looking at jobs, and I worked for another Greek dentist in Peabody, Dr. Argyros, who just
Peabody,
recently,
you got it. That's the
Peabody.
pronunciation. Everybody
Yeah,
else will
yeah,
say Peabody,
Peabody.
but that's it.
Yeah,
That's the
Peabody.
that's the Boston way to say it.
Total. And so, yeah, I worked with him, and then a couple other little, part-time jobs I picked up. I asked a lot of questions about business, about clinical stuff, and I listened. I was like a sponge, and I finally felt ready to do it on my own after about 5 years.
What was your biggest challenge when you first started your first year? What was your what would it be like if I'm a young dentist right now graduating and looking at starting? What was your biggest challenge that came to fruition?
I just didn't see how I was going to get all that money um, to buy the practice, to buy the real estate the practice was in. And luckily, I connected with a great lady who helped me figure all of that out from a bank. She's doing her own thing now. She's helped me at all along, as I expanded and whatever else. But I just thought I couldn't. The amount of funding just seemed unreachable for me. But at least in that time, when was it, 2010, the banks were lending money for pretty fair rates. And I think
Yeah.
dentists are really good people to lend to. I think we're not a risky bet for a bank. And
Take us back though when you went. I maybe asked a poor question. Your
mm,
first job when you went in from, working in the halls of protection in the dental school to now going out. So your first year in private practice, what were some of the things that, not gonna say overwhelming, but that hit you pretty hard, or that you
yeah.
felt, boy, I wish I knew this? What are some lessons that you learned there?
I really didn't. Maybe it was all like maybe it was because I had these confident, ancestors.
Mhm.
I was probably overconfident, to be honest. I thought
Okay.
I knew everything clinically, and of course, the more you work, the more humbled you get. But I came out of school ready to go, thinking thinking there was not much to learn, and I sure got humbled over the years. So I didn't really have any clinical you know, trepidation coming from school to working. I
Mhm.
should have probably, but I didn't.
Well, that's good. I just think because I think that's a big factor, and I think a lot of people hibernate back to, well, I'll just go work at corporate, as if that's another protection blanket when it's really, it's a different story. So, so let's talk about that. 2010, you're going to set up your own practice. Now you have some guidance. You have a grandmother, you have your mother, you have your father. They're all in dentistry. How much did they play a part in your picturing what you wanted to do?
Probably everything to do with it. I just thought that's what you do when you're a dentist. You open an office, you have a staff, you treat your patients. So I didn't really think about it any other way. I'll say like I have a number of associates now, and I ask them all the time, why did you guys go work for corporate places first? And their answer is, and this might answer your question, their answer is that private dentists don't hire you right out of school. They want you to have a year or two experience. And they all wanted to work in a private office, but they couldn't find jobs. And it might be city dependent. Maybe we have so many graduates here in Boston that the dentists have choices, but that was interesting to me. I didn't put that together in my mind that that might be a reason that people coming out of school might
Mhm.
not work in a private office.
Interesting. I never gave that a lot of thought, but I've heard a lot of people talk that I have a lot of reverence for, and they said one of the major things that corporate does is they provide jobs, and there's a lot of jobs that they're able to employ a lot of graduates, and like we talked off air, there's a lot of graduates, and that's increasing almost, you know, geometrically year by year because of the new dental schools opening and everything else. It's an interesting landscape, the business of dentistry part, you know, the business of dental education, let's say. So let's dive in a little deeper now. So you set up your practice. How about your business structure? Did you learn stuff in your 5 years in associateships that says, well, Boston may be a little different than Cleveland, so I'm going to need to set up my practice like this? Talk about what you wanted your practice to be from a dental services delivery standpoint.
Yeah, I worked for a really, really smart businessman. I don't know if I should name names, but I really asked him a lot of questions. He probably got real sick of me asking him questions, but
he shared with you, right?
he shared with me. I think he was happy that I was asking. He wanted to teach somebody, and I was really, really eager to learn about that piece of it because I felt really well prepared about the dental part, but and I was learning more. I was taking classes at the Koi Center, and I just wanted to make sure that my financial systems were solid too, because I'd seen that take down some dentists around, and I didn't want that to happen to me. And yeah, I formulated just by trial and error a lot of different systems. When I bought the practice that I bought, the dentist that I bought it from was in his 80s, very nice guy, military dentist, Irish guy, patients around his age, very sweet man. Took every insurance, but I think that's just how it was when he started. He just never kind of changed things. So right away, when I bought the practice, I cut a huge number of them. I kept 2. I didn't want to, lose everything I had just purchased. So I hung on to the 2 best paying plans, but I knew eventually I wanted to phase those out. I was a little nervous to do that in the beginning.
Good. Let's talk a little more about this then. So you buy a practice from an 80-year-old dentist. So is it a turnkey? He's out first day or what?
He's out because unfortunately he had a stroke. So it was sad, but yeah. So I just on my own from day one.
Then, right? So you got to sell. So it truly is. It's almost the same as someone who's not in the picture at all.
Right.
So you have to do that. I had that happen a couple times. So, all right. So that's your starting point. And there's no question, you have very clear image. This is just my perception in 15 minutes talking. Very clear image, very clear foundation of who you are, what you'll stand for, what you won't stand for. Right. I mean, that's clear. So you're going to project, the practice is going to project on, favorably on who you are and who you want it to be. And let's talk more now. 8 insurances that he was involved with, and you cut 6 of them right away. What did you do to determine the lowest paying? How deep did you go into the figures?
I ran a report on EagleSoft, which is what we're using, and I just looked at which were the 2 biggest, a lot of things. I looked at what percentage of patients were from what, but more than anything, I looked at the number of the write-off and how much it was relative to the services, to how many patients.
Let's review that again, right? You looked at the percent. So of the 8 insurances, each has a percent, and at the end, plus cash patients, there's 100% total, right? So let's say insurance A is 20%, B is 15. Then you looked at the amount of write-off. So in other words, the percent that they're actually paying on your fee schedule, correct?
Right. Exactly.
Was his fee schedule good? Did you have to adjust that?
I slowly crept it up. He was doing pretty well, and he lived a pretty simple life, and his fees were very low even for the area.
So his fees were low, because that happens a lot, especially in some senior docs who they would rather not have the aggravation of dealing with, oh, you raise your fees, because they don't want to hear that. They just keep it the same.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you go into a practice that really is underpriced for their services, and they're getting poor reimbursement on top of a low fee.
Exactly. I think it was more like a hobby for him. I don't think that I didn't think he needed it. I didn't get the sense that he needed his office to be profitable for him, but I was at a different phase of life and, young family, and I needed to
Sure.
be more profitable. Yeah.
What did the practice look like on the physical plant? 3 rooms, 4 rooms,
Three
whatever?
rooms, you got it. Yeah. 3 rooms with carpet and, in
Of
the
course.
operatory.
Paneling?
So
Paneling?
yeah, upstairs there was paneling. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they're using
Yeah.
paneling on the
But
wall.
clean and beautiful. Like he kept it really nice. He had all his original equipment that actually worked really well. It was looking old, but it worked well. And you know how we buy stuff now and it doesn't last that long. I'm sure
I
the
buy
stuff he had
sometimes a
was
lot of used stuff that's been reconditioned
exactly because
because it
it
works
lasts so
forever.
much longer than the stuff that we get now. But yeah, so
Okay.
it was functional 3-room practice. He didn't have a hygienist, so that's one of the first changes I did. I hired a hygienist that I took a mission trip with that I knew was a good person, and we started things up real slowly. Everyone had perio. Everyone had
Yeah.
nobody knew me. No one trusted me. The hygienist was crying every day when we went to lunch. If I have to tell one more person they have perio, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But we slowly got things back up to very slowly. We didn't want to scare anybody. They didn't know us. They had to get to know us, and
Rural, suburban, or what would you call
he's
it?
in the city of Boston, but one of the suburbs in Brighton. We're still there. Last year, I added a 4th op, but we've been functioning with 3 ops for a very long time.
I guess so.
Yeah,
2010 until 2024. And when
yeah.
did you add the fourth? Now, do you own the building? I'm assuming.
I do. I didn't buy it right away. It was just a
Sure.
lot of money all at once for me, but he rented me, the office, and then when he went to sell, he gave me the right of first refusal. So we made that work, and yeah, so I have the building as well. So then, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Well, you're a little limited, right? You got 4 rooms now. Is there any chance for further expansion, or is it you maxed out?
No, I mean we could go up. I just, I and everyone I talk to about this says the same thing, should expand. I really like having my thumb on everything and just knowing we really maximize those ops. There's not a lot of downtime. There's not a lot of unused time. But I like knowing what's going on. And at
Uh-huh.
4 ops, I really know everything that's happening every day in every room. And I think if it were more than that, it'd probably get away from me a little bit. So it's kind of more for my peace of mind that I know
Yeah.
that quality things are happening. I know people are being well taken care of.
So let's
So
go.
that's
Let's go
Mhm.
back to the other question because I wanted to know a little more about the drop insurance. So 8 plans, you dropped 6, 2 you kept. Do you have any idea approximately the percent of your practice that was? Did you hold on to, let's say, the
So
2?
yeah, we had Delta and Blue Cross. Had Delta Premier. I think that was 45% of our practice. It
Oh,
was a
that's a gorilla in the room. Okay.
big chunk, big chunk. And I think Blue Cross was 35%. So it was mostly those two.
It's 80%.
Yeah.
And so the other six were like
They were just little ones.
yeah, low hanging fruit. So
Yeah.
that seems simple. Now, how did you handle it? Did you just tell the 20% of people with the 6 insurance, did you just send a letter and say, listen, we're just no longer in network with you?
I
Did you
think
use that as a training ground to then ultimately drop some of the other ones? How did you do it?
I think that wasn't very calculated. We just kind of, as the practice transition right away, I made that happen. So I think patients just understood, hey, it's a new person. It's going to be different. We didn't have to have the conversations that we had when we dropped the other 2.
That's a great move personally, because people are expecting change.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your risk? Do you want to share like what the practice was doing and or how much you had invested in it?
Can't remember numbers. I can't remember, honestly can't, because I have it all on spreadsheets and I
That's okay.
live and die by those spreadsheets, but I can't get it off the cuff. But just in the sense that we raised the fees quite a bit and we were still pretty low for the area, the numbers doubled, tripled right away. And that was, I think, mainly from raising fees.
Okay, how soon did you raise those fees? Because we talked about
Right
trying to
away.
keep things right away.
Right away. And also,
Across the board?
across the board, we had a hygienist as well.
Well, so there you go. So you can
Yeah.
say, listen, this is how cleans are gonna be. So they see a difference, and if they have to pay a difference, they see it.
Right.
That's not a bad move. Now, versus if they have a hygienist and a kind of perception is, I'm getting the same cleaning. Why am I paying more? Right.
Right.
So talk about, you had to have some resistance. How did that go? What those conversations?
You know, I didn't get a ton. And there were definitely a few people that left. They didn't want to hear
Yeah.
the treatment we were recommending. It was very much he did these beautiful pin buildup amalgams that would last decades.
Yep, yep,
He was really
yep.
skilled at what he did.
You said military, right? He was
Yeah,
military.
military guy.
Yeah, they could do pin amalgams like there's nobody's business.
Magical that there's some of them still there, even
Yep.
all these years later. But no one even really knew what crowns were or how,
Right.
I've been coming in all these years and we took it slow. I could really sense some people that didn't want to be pushed, and we would just say, it's okay. If you need something, we're here next time, or we'll talk more about it in the future. And a few did, a handful of people up and left and changed and said, we're over treatment planning and we're
Sure.
trying to sell too much, and that's okay. We're not for everybody. And so we did lose a few people, not very many. A lot of people stuck with us. And then over the years, the practice got a little younger. I think it always kind of takes on
Sure. Personality.
the demographic of who's running it. He had 80-year-old patients, and the people coming in were closer to my age. The area is close to BC and some colleges, so there's a lot of young professionals
Sure.
trickling in, and things started to change.
Great. So, so just to recap for people, following along, we looked at the practice. We took the smallest and least contributing and worst paying insurances and dropped them, which was really might be a little blip in the road, right? But you kept the two gorillas, which is the 45% and the 35%. So that's 80% of the practice. And you raised your fees. Okay. Now take us through, when did you have the next thought that says, I'm going to drop these insurances?
So we plugged along like that for a long time,
Right.
10 years. It wasn't until that whole Delta Dental thing, I'm not sure if it was national or just in Massachusetts, when Jill and Christine started AID, when they sent out these sneaky contracts that we all signed not knowing what we were signing, saying we agree to drop our reimbursements. Not only weren't we getting that 3% meager raise in reimbursements, they had held it steady for a few years, but now they were going to drop it. And that's when I was like, enough's enough. It's just unjust. I remember premiums, or I remember annual limits being $1,000 back in my parents' day when I was doing their books. And I was thinking to myself, here they are, they haven't raised these numbers since way back in my parents' time. And now a whole generation later, not only are they giving the same amount to patients, but they're dropping our reimbursements, and the patients' premiums are going up. I thought, this is just a racket. And that's when I kind of really started thinking about dropping Delta, which was my biggest one.
So what was the strategy then? Take us through that step.
So I was really nervous. I was really scared.
For sure.
We're in a blue collar area, and I thought, my patients like me. We provide very good customer service. We take care of them really well. But these people live and die by their insurance and their paychecks, and I was really nervous. So,
well, one out of every other, think of every other patient you see is the Delta patient.
Exactly. So we started slowly just talking to people about, and Boston is a ripe city for corporate, injustices. People are really cerebral. They all are about justice. And we just thought, isn't it terrible what insurance is? They're taking the same money from you and they're only paying $1,000 and they're paying us less. Like, we started having those conversations just chairside for months. And I started talking to friends about how they did it. I hired a consultant just for this one thing. I had been a part of offices that had consultants in, and I didn't like the way they kind of a lot of them cookie cutter, just kind of changed everything, not based on what the practice needed, but what they knew. And I saw it not work so much. So, and I saw how expensive it was. So I didn't want a blanket consultant to come into my practice. But I wanted one specifically for this thing. So I asked around. I found a lady who helped us craft some scripting for the staff and a letter to the patients. We made a rule that we weren't going to do this until we had the opportunity to talk to everyone in person about it. So we literally hired one staff member just to talk to people. We invested a lot of time and money in this transition. We didn't just drop it. Also, I think a big piece of the puzzle is make sure your customer service is spot on. You're gonna, if your patients don't love coming to your practice, this is just going to be a reason for them to leave. So you have to have all your sound business practices in place first. And
So
you have to
give us your timeline then.
So it took
When
at
did you
least
just
6 months.
Yeah, when did you say, listen, we're going to do this, so we're going to initiate the conversations?
So probably a year all in, because we started having conversations, then we wrote that letter, or I forget the number of months that you have to stay in.
Wait. So the letter you sent was telling them you were definitely we're going to go out of network?
The letter to Delta that said we're pulling
I'm
out.
sorry.
Then you wait a number of months, and during that time, we put a little check mark on everyone's chart. Once we knew we actually put a note in orange or some indicating way that we knew we'd talk to that patient in person about why we were doing this.
Okay. So the letter
we
to
got them
Delta
all.
went out after
Yeah.
6 months. And when did you hire the staff member to do this?
Right around, well, it was an existing staff member, but she was working 1 day a week. We just had her come in a bunch more days for this period. She was flexible,
Okay.
so it worked for us. And so we would catch everyone at their 6-month appointment. And as they were checking out, we'd say, hey, next time you come, this is going to be the situation. Unfortunately, you're going to have to pay up front. We wish it weren't this way. You'll get reimbursed. We'll still help you with all the paperwork. Our fees aren't that dissimilar. It might be. And we would tell them, we did that math for them. It took a lot of investment. We said, hey, instead of you paying this amount out of pocket at your cleaning, which is something we already did, we told people that already, you're going to have to pay this amount. We had spreadsheets with those numbers. So it was very transparent. And we said, your out of pocket will be this slightly much more, but you'll have to pay up front. You'll get reimbursed. We're really sorry to have to do this, but we just want to provide you guys the best care. We took a lot of time. We told people in person. We as well sent a letter, sent an email. I know Jill sent a video to her patients. We didn't do that. We probably could have. That would have been really nice too, to see you in person explaining why you're doing this. And it worked out well. We lost a handful of people, and that's okay.
Do you have
There
any
are
idea
some.
on those numbers?
We probably lost initially 5% of those patients. Probably
That's
2%.
nothing. That's
Probably
nothing.
2% came back though, after
Yeah.
trying other offices
That's
and
nothing.
realizing, and they come back with a whole other attitude. Like, hey, I saw what's out there.
Yeah.
I know you guys are a little more, but I really love your office and what you guys do. And
Well, the people that come back are your raving fans.
exactly. And the
Because it
people
took a
that
lot for
left,
them. Think about it. A person has to admit that, quote, they did something wrong, right?
and the people
And
that
or they
left,
have to say, I took the cheap way out.
yeah, or the people that left just have different values than us, and that's okay too. We're not everybody's dentists. I told my team all the
Yeah.
time. We don't
But-
take it personally. Some
Yeah.
people's motivation is purely money, and that's okay. We don't judge
Yeah.
that. That some people are in that position where they have to find the cheapest work, and that's okay.
Right.
To be honest,
Right.
that was a kind of a side benefit.
Yeah,
Those
there are
people
some.
tended to be the most need
Mhm.
the most hand holding, be the
Yeah.
most of a problem for my team.
Yeah.
And we lost those too. So that was a side benefit that we didn't
Okay.
anticipate.
Well, interesting, right? It's interesting. And 5%, right, of potential, it's half of your practice.
Mhm.
So it's a not even a blip on the screen. Good for you. And congratulations. So then do you have the say, let's roll with Blue Cross Blue Shield next, or what?
So then my team wanted to kill me because this took a lot out of them.
Right.
But they saw why we did it. They looked, they saw, oh gosh, we're working a lot less hard. We're seeing less patients a day. It's not as much of a scramble. We're extending appointment times, and we're just as profitable, if not more. My team knows my numbers pretty well. I'm really into transparency, and they all feel like they have some ownership in the business. And they do, we reward in certain ways, but because everyone works hard there, and breeds that kind of environment. So they saw the numbers, they knew why. But then, about a year later, we did the same with Blue Cross. And similar process. We wrote letters, we talked to people. We were already used to doing it. We knew what we were doing by that point.
Yeah, because the first thought would be, well, I have Delta, I'll drop Delta, I'll pick up Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? That's what some people have experienced.
Yes, and some people did do that. They switched insurances, and then we had to say, "Oh, I'm really sorry." We had to do it again, but they already kind of knew why. Our patients are pretty educated as to what's going on in the.
You did it again. Would you drop both at the same time?
I didn't drop both at the same time.
No, I'm saying if you did it again, would you?
Oh, I don't know. That's a great question. It would have.
I mean, it seems like you should, because it's just going to
Probably.
be a clean break. There's no place to go. This is what we're doing. Philosophically, this is the way we're going to practice.
Yeah, knowing this now, yes, it would have been the better way to go. I don't think I would have done it if I thought I had to do both, because I was too scared. But looking back on hindsight, it would have been the better way to do it for sure.
It takes a lot of Keonis to do that. I know.
Rip off the Band-Aid. We should have just done it all together. But we were also trying to be reasonable and show our patients, hey, like, we want to stay in network. We want to use the best of your benefits, but we just have to drop this one. It's just become unreal, like how much they're stealing from us.
So what year did this all go down? 2021?
Yes, right before. Was it 2021?
Right after the pandemic kind of was over, or no?
Was it right after the pandemic? My brain fog is from the mommy brain. I don't know. It must have been after COVID, I think.
Okay.
And then one year after the other. Yeah, I can't imagine if we did that.
So how long have you been insurance free then, essentially?
So then we did that in so we've been insurance free for 2 years.
Okay.
2 years.
So by the end of 2022, you're done with insurance?
Yeah.
All right. So what does the practice look like? What do the numbers look like in terms of where you're at?
So for 2 years, I didn't raise fees during this process. And that's typically how we, see up every year, is by raising our fees. We just didn't. We wanted to make that conscious choice and say, hey, if our reason for doing this is because we want to avoid taking the write-off, we're going to pass that savings on to our patients. And we told them that. So I'd say, but it feels a lot different in our practice. We probably are up maybe 4% in revenues like this year. The first year we were up a lot more in revenues. I think it was 20%. But with also working less and taking more time with people, spending more time at their appointments, extending appointment times,
Did your training at COIS have any input in here?
It did, because if you're trying to do things in a quality way and really, properly take the time to gather information and treatment plan things, you can't charge for a lot of those things.
That are non-coded, right? Yeah.
They're not coded, but they're important. And if you want to do comprehensive care the right way, you've got to figure out a way to make the time for that. And we were struggling so much with that, with these huge write-offs. I think one year my write-off was close to 400,000, and I thought, this is gross. Like, that's a whole person's salary plus some. Like, that's, and now that we could probably profit even more if we wanted to bring more people in, but we've made the decision that we just want a better quality of life. We want better quality of care for our patients. We want to take time and do some treatment planning, maybe not charge for those things. We don't always sell a full mouth case with that, but we still present people what their options are. Those things take time, and you don't get reimbursed for those. We're able to do that stuff now. So yeah, that COIS piece really made it obvious that if we want to provide this kind of care, we have to look at profitability.
So if I summarize and say the COIS piece allowed you to build your foundation of your practice, and if your foundation of your practice was based on those principles, it's not something that really is copacetic with a low fee, insurance only based reimbursement schedule.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've heard that indirectly in different ways. I think you put it it's a little bit more clear for me when you said that. So that's a healthy education. It's also teaching, you know, your approach to your patient care delivery in such a way, and now realizing again, and it's right back to who you are and your self-esteem. It just is like, I'm doing this. This is what it's worth.
Yeah, yeah, and we really feel my whole team, we feel beholden to patients. Like we really got into this to help people at the end of the day. And you know, we're not. I live in a suburb of Boston that's got a lot of finance money, and we're never going to make that kind of money being dentists, and that's okay. We're going to be comfortable. Um, you know, we want to help people at the end of the day, and it was just becoming impossible with that insurance encroachment on our business. The more greedy they got, the more stressed we got, and then that parlayed into how we treated patients, and we wanted to get off that treadmill, and it feels really good. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the question that came up. The
Question two.
yeah, question two.
So we have some rock stars here in Massachusetts. We really do. I know you know all about it, but for people who don't know, basically, kind of piggybacking off the medical loss ratio issue, where in the Obamacare package, I think it was part of the Obamacare package, they made a ratio as to how much percentage that insurance companies had to spend directly on patient care, so that they couldn't just profit unchecked. Insurance companies. So we kind of, not we, they, Mo mainly, and a bunch of other people in Massachusetts, came up with a dental portion of this, crafted a very, well-written issue, because we had been trying to pass a lot of things, with Jill and the AID, and even that Mass Dental Society tried to pass some things through legislation, and they just would sit on people's desks and sit on people's desks. And so Mo realized that unless we get this thing on a ballot and we get it in front of people, nothing's going to change. Well, to get something on a ballot takes a lot of money and a lot of time. And luckily he put his own money up and support, and got, a lot of people got involved. It wasn't just him, but he kind of spearheaded everything, and we got it on a ballot that said 83% of or 83% of insurance revenues has to directly correlate to patient care. The other percentages, admin fees, whatever. And it got passed resoundingly. I
Yeah,
forget the
huge.
numbers. In the 70s, and all the people in government said nothing passes by this big of a margin. It was pretty unanimous. So, I think too, our patients in Massachusetts are pretty aware of these things, and it's a pretty easy place to drop insurance, because our patients know, they hear the stuff in the news, they know, they're aware.
Well, Delta Dental in Massachusetts is one of the largest it's one of their largest states, is it not?
It is, and I think Jill and Christine know a ton more about this than me, but I know they also underwrite our like Mass Health here, like our
Yeah, Medicaid. Yeah.
the Medicaid arm of dentistry. They call it something else, but it's under their umbrella. So yeah, they have a big reach in Massachusetts.
Well,
They
with
weren't
that
happy
kind
with
of-
us.
well, that's a lot of clout, right? And that's a lot of political juice. I mean,
Yeah.
and you're in the arena with the Lions and the Tigers. I mean, it's simple
Yeah,
as that.
they weren't happy. And then, for a whole other year, and I think they just came out with the numbers, but they tried to describe or define what was in the numerator and the denominator of those
Yeah.
things. And they got real sneaky what they were
Fuzzy
throwing
math,
in.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course they did.
All their charitable contributions, which were going to their yachts or whatever else, got thrown in the numerator. And, we have some really good minds who were really reading that legal papers and papers and papers, and finding out what they were trying to pull in that, and they came out with a pretty good result. So we're really lucky.
Interesting. I bet you their charitable contributions went from one year to the next skyrocketed because they just use that as I mean, that's one red flag, right? If for example, our revenue in the last 3 years, we give charitable contributions. Like if I'm an IRS, right? Charitable contributions show 2,000 every year, and all of a sudden in year 2024, it's 100,000. Right? It's a little bit of it's a delta, and you look at the delta, and that's where you see I know that when we go over a lot of our profit and loss statements and our balance sheets and stuff, we look at those deltas, like how this is changing, what's caused this change, right? You know, like as business people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk about now the Independent Dentist Alliance, right? The Alliance of
Yeah.
Independent Dentists. So
So
it's a
these
wonderful
girls,
organization.
these people in this group are, it's not just girls. We have men in there on the board too, but
Oh, you let us in? You do?
no, no,
You do. You let us in. Okay, that's nice.
it's just because Jill and Christine started this whole thing.
Yeah, but you know what
That's
though? I
nothing.
mean, the truth is, you guys are a powerful group,
I
and
hope so. I hope so, because
not to
we
be
don't really
taken
know.
lightly.
We
Yeah.
don't know, like, what reach we're having. We're just working like crazy people, especially Christine and Jill at this. They just they pour so much of their time into this thing. And we're having we went national, I think, like
Yes.
not too long
Excited.
ago,
Yeah.
which is exciting because there's a whole lot of people in Colorado and California and all across the country who are just really like-minded on this issue. And we're trying to collaborate and, come up with some things. And we have our first conference we're planning in DC in March. So there's a Take Back Medicine conference the same weekend. So we're trying to kind of piggyback off their momentum and get our heads together, have some speakers, because I think that the more this thing evolves, it's coming really clear that the way you stay independent is by becoming really good at the business part of it.
Well, if we don't take a lesson from medicine,
Yeah,
shame on us, right? History will repeat itself. It's just change the last three initials after your name, right?
totally.
2 or 3, right? From MD to DMD to DDS. We're going to jump in that pool. And now that they're figuring out that they've completely given up all their skills, rights, autonomy, almost their brains, and now AI is stepping in, it's going to be worse.
We're in a much better position to fight this because we're not so far in. And
Right. That's what I'm saying. Learn,
yeah.
don't jump,
Yeah, we are definitely, and I don't, being a part of this organization, we've had a lot of consultants and people talking to us. And before I really got the information, I was really disheartened that, oh, this is just the way it's going to be. It's just inevitable that corporate dentistry is going to take over. But it's really not that way. They're starting really to suffer. They're starting to have real issues staffing their practices. They're starting to sell off real estate because they're not as profitable. Because I think, and the people that are stuck in these contracts, they can't really talk about it because of all the non-disclosures. But I think word's still getting out as to what a bad deal it is to work in one of these offices, or how it
Well,
is to sell your office to one of these offices. Like you become an indentured servant for a number of years, and you could have just sold it earlier to someone private and not had to, work your way back in, or, I
well,
think some of these things are coming out, and
let's
they
think.
don't.
The difference in medical delivery versus dental delivery. How many medical doctors are hands-on technicians?
Right.
Right? How many of them deliver their services with their hands? They have to do it, right? For us, that's it. That's a lot of what as dentists we do. Now we can have, train team members, stuff help deliver parts of it, which is why you lose some of those parts, right? Like if you walked in tomorrow and said, listen, Maria, we're taking away your 3 top people in your office and you're going to go work and you got to produce this.
Yeah,
Can't do it.
it's
You can
impossible.
look at those bean counters and numbers all day long, but it's a personal business and we're
It is.
personal providers. It's not anywhere near the same. And I don't think you can just pigeonhole us into that model. I'm sorry, that's my soapbox. But anyway,
No, I'm with you. And I have had friends who sold their practices and told me things, not too much because they're not allowed. But when they were selling it, they said, "Look, these are the numbers I have to make. This is easy." I had a friend say, "I can do this with my eyes closed." And I said to him, "You can do it with your eyes closed, the way that you're running the business. But
correct.
the minute they come in and staff starts leaving because they don't, it's not a good deal to work there, and they cut your supplies and you can't order the files that you like, or you know, it's going to be really hard for you to make those numbers." And a year later, that's what he's experiencing. they're smart at their contracts. That's what they're really good at, is their contracts. And but I think, you know, the way that independent dentistry is going to win in the end is that when people get out of those situations, they don't go looking to work back in there again. They pay their time, they you know, they pay their dues, and then they go work in a private office afterwards if they're going to work again. Nothing's going to replace the relationships in the way we run our business. And I think it's not a foregone conclusion that they're just going to take over dentistry. I really hope not.
Right. I don't believe so either. So you have young children, right? You have
I
children.
do. Mhm.
Have you ever read, do you own the book, if you give a mouse a cookie? Do you have that book?
Yes. Yeah.
It's very appropriate to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Insurances, you name it. In other words, if you give the insurance company your cooperation, now they're going to want more.
Exactly.
Right. And more. And
Yeah.
at what point do you get to the point where you said, enough's enough, we're getting robbed?
Yes.
And it's an individual decision. I think you were very clear on that. And I agree 100%. Each doctor has to make their own decision, but I think you have to understand what the playing field is. And that was one of the benefits that I had coming to our area to practice. We had a group of dentists that really understood what it meant to participate in insurance and the least favored nations clause. And if you participate with one, you participate with them all, and a bunch of other things. And don't let them isolate you and prey on your fear and ignorance, because it was a knowledge. And oh my goodness, you know, I came in, I was first year in it, and there was this group that they had formed outside of the dental society, you know, and they could have these discussions. And I was like amazed at what I learned in a short amount of time. I just was never on my menu. I was never going to be in a participating practice. Just wasn't going to be. But
It's
we
good to
were
have
fortunate.
that clarity.
Yeah, we were fortunate. I mean, we were
Yeah.
fortunate. We had some leaders that said, hey, folks, we need to have these conversations, and understanding everyone makes their own decision, but here's the facts.
Yeah, and I think when you can talk to people like that who have that insight, you know, we as general dentists, we typically have we're also isolated in our own little offices, and we don't
Yes.
typically share that kind of information. I think if you have that benefit of speaking to someone who says, hey, it's going to be okay, and these are the numbers, this is how it works, you don't have to be scared. I think it's a lot easier to get over the hump. I think there's a lot of fear. I think we don't communicate enough, and that's why things like this show are great, because people who are kind of on the fence about it can hear from a lot of different people in different cities and different situations who've done this, and everyone just wishes they'd have done it sooner.
Yeah, that's, I mean, the one biggest regret, you know, everyone's biggest regret is I didn't do this sooner. It's so
Yes.
funny.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of being able to host this. And Drew stepped away and asked me to do this. I was like, sure. And I tried to reach out, because I don't get a lot of people saying, hey, I'd like to come on and talk about this. So I try to reach out to people who express, hey, I did this in a certain time. So I think their stories eventually are going to resonate with the connection somewhere, somehow. So, all right, for yourself, maybe there's a woman listening, dentist, that, hey, I connect with that. Maybe there's a doc who's in a corporate situation in the Boston area who's saying, I can do this, you know, and maybe they'll reach out to you. And every guest to a T, every guest to a T has been more than willing to have those conversations with doctors. 100%. So I always encourage them to reach out. I don't get a lot back to me, but it's nice when they reach out to the guests, and I get that feedback.
I hope so. And you know, like there's also a lot of resources like that, even if you're not a paid member of the AAD, which the membership's next to nothing and none of us get paid, but there's a great Facebook page. All they do is vet to make sure that they really are a private dentist. Yep. Trying to join the page, and it's free, and there's so much information. There's so many of us who've done this, so many people who've done it before me in different environments, and you can ask whatever question you want and you'll get really good answers from people. It's been,
yeah, that's what's nice about the fee-for-service dentist group on Facebook. Yep. It's dentists, and they always are willing to help. I mean, it's very, 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 very rare if you ever get a snarky comment. Like a woman put out there was here's a perfect example. Someone said, I'm looking for a generic Traxident. And then of course someone says, you're doing Crown and Bridge, you're charging this, you shouldn't be doing that. I was like, it's not really what I asked. But as dentists, we see this all the time. Or a person put an x-ray up. Look at the distal of number 5. What are your thoughts? And what are you going to do about 31? And what are you going to do about this? Like I asked about 5. Can we focus? I mean, but right? Isn't it's
Yeah.
got to be some section of our brain in dental school
Yeah.
gets turned on to say, listen, ignore the gist, jump on some tangent,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
There's always one person who has something to say. I think for by and large though, it's been really helpful. Like,
Yes.
and even when I read those, all of the ones, mostly the business ones more than the clinical, because I get a lot of my clinical thing from the Coist tribe that I'm on. But the business stuff, a lot of things, even if I didn't have that question and I read it, I think, oh, that's a great question, and
Right.
some really variety of solutions to it, not just one, and it's helpful. It opens your mind, and it's such a good resource. And I think most dentists are so invested in protecting our profession that we want everyone to succeed. There's, our success doesn't make someone down the street less successful. We can all be successful. There's an
Right.
abundance here. It's not a scarcity mode. No,
Right.
there's
That's
enough
a
for
key
everyone
word.
to do well. And so it's great that everyone's so collaborative and they share their
Those are the
successes.
best ones. Those are the
Yeah.
best places. I like to live in those areas. That's
Yeah.
my feeling. Okay, last question I want to ask you. If you could go anywhere, any place in time back and do or experience anything, what would you do? Where would you
Oh,
go?
wow. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Like like I love architecture, so I would love to be around in that mid-century time, the Bauhaus movement in Germany. That would be really cool to experience. Maybe without the misogyny, but to go back to that mid-century mod stuff, I think that'd be really cool to see.
Oh, you always wanted to be an architect.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's in the
good for
back
you.
of my head.
Appropriate answer. So, Doc, Maria, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and willingness to come on and share your experience and your story. You're going to help a lot of folks. So, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for what you're doing. I think it's a really important to our profession, and it's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. If you would like to share your fee for service story, please fill out our contact form at ffsdentistry.com. Also, be sure to join our Fee for Service Dentistry Facebook group. For help starting your dental membership plan, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com and membershipmastercourse.com. Finally, for help with in-house financing, visit dentalfinancingdirect.com. And don't forget, your story is what you make of it. This is your name on the door and your reputation on the line. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.